CountryWide Connect with Andy Thompson and Sarah Perriam-Lampp.
We are going to cross to a very dear friend that I enjoyed having a lot to do with in my time at Rural Exchange back in the day, and I was so excited to see your progress too, Jaiden, into the world of publishing. Tell us about your journey into becoming the now owner of Farm Trader.
Yeah, well, it's it's a bit of a blast from the past, isn't it, Sarah? This is kind of a bit of deja vu. Look, I decided, to go into the very unpredictable world of print media. It's been, as you know, something that I've been very passionate about. I'm a resident tractor nerd, and so it's kind of cool, right? It's and every time you present one, and you're so proud of it, it's like another child, So it's really cool. I get a lot of satisfaction out of it, and the machinery manufacturers and the community it's been humbling, the support that we've been given, so it's very cool. Yeah.
Jaiden, I love my tractors. I've only got a 26 horsepower Kubota BX 2680 on my life sentence block at the moment, which I absolutely love. It is my most favourite tractor I think I've ever bought. But when it comes to what's happening on the ground at the moment, what's going on with machinery sales? Is there anything that's surprising you? Obviously, it's been a fantastic couple of years for farming, from sheep and beef right through to dairy, and probably not quite so flash for our arable guys, our arable friends. But what's the trends? What are we looking at?
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Like you say, like commodity prices and on farm, has never been so good, right? And so it's probably the best way to describe it is there's a real difference between what's happening in the North Island and what's happening in the South Island, and also regionally there's a lot of variation, and there doesn't seem to be a lot of rhyme or reason. Like some dairying areas, like Waikato, for example, has been quite soft, and last month they were down 10% on the year before, and then you look at Otago, for example, and Southland, they were up 150 and 220% respectively. So some of those regions that, on-farm commodity prices are really strong, are really starting to see a bit of a lift. But in other areas, it can be quite soft. I think there's some nuance as well, though, in that, right? Like we, at the start of the year, generally numbers are a bit softer, and we've seen, to see a trend later in the year, October, November, December, probably more so around manufacturers' balance date. So some of the big manufacturers have either a 31st of October or 31st of December balance date, and so they naturally try and push for a bit of market share later on in the year.
What about the arable guys having a shit of a season, and how that's flowing through in terms of upgrading and things?
Yeah, so I think that some of the numbers are so definitely over 140 horsepower tractor and up, right? Those numbers are continuing to climb in terms of volume. I think that's also probably a little bit representative of tractors on dairy farms getting bigger, and so naturally that market is getting stronger. But the arable, so I think that the arable space has been, I think that we've seen a really soft end to last year. They waited, there's a lot of stock on the ground. They sort of fired up just as they were going into that spring, either planting or whatever they were doing on farm. So we are seeing a little more sit and wait. I think there is also a lot more uptake in technology there, trying to get that efficiency right with, with AutoPath, AutoTrack, AutoPath, some of those kind of things, section control, so that they can save on those inputs. Obviously, diesel's a hot topic at the moment, and so any of those efficiencies that they can get on farm is definitely strong. But they have been probably unfairly chastised in terms of machinery increases, price increases, because they are naturally at that pointy end of the market of high horsepower tractors, and so that's going to the market now. Some of those machines are very expensive.
Jaiden, I was interested in you talking about your sales stats, particularly for Otago Southland earlier in the year, and I'm just wondering, do you see big boosts around field days when we have a field day on? Obviously, Waimumu was on. In your data, do you actually see those sales track immediately, or do you see a flow-on effect after the events? Can you see a spike, I guess, is what I'm asking?
Yeah, so it's Probably no is the short answer. I mean, for stock on the ground, there will be yes, right? So, but there's, but like a lot of people would go to Waimumu, for example, it's in a perfect window to then indent order a tractor to turn up in the spring. So that number would actually turn up in our data in October or November, even though there is that, but to your point though, I think, particularly at Waimumu, palpable excitement, right? Like, the vibe down there is very good. Farmers are generally, buoyant about what's happening on farm for them. I expect this year, Mystery Creek, I suspect is going to be strong. There's a lot of stars aligning there. And so whether stuff gets sold, these are big ticket items, right? And there's obviously a little bit of, work to do from the dealer's perspective to get these people across the line. But it's definitely still a place to kind of come and have a look. But yeah, there's, like I say, there's a little bit of a delay in terms of when they indent order that tractor or if it's stock on the ground.
Jaiden, when I went over to Switzerland to the Ag Journo Congress, I met the company Eco Robotics and started to see a lot of the stuff that's happening in that space with AI and automated tractors and that precision spraying and things like that. And then I've actually just done two stories side by side, one out of the US and one out of Europe, in Countrywide, and it seems to be, talking to the local distributor here in Ashburton, are really picking up speed quite quickly in this space. Is you seeing that, like the understanding and concept that this is the future's here now, basically?
Yeah, no, absolutely, 100%, and probably ties back to the arable side, right? Like, we've got tractors now that can steer themselves. You can put parameters in, it will turn itself at the headland and then come back and, and put the implement down. So you literally all you're doing is sitting in the tractor being its eyes, right? But there is autonomous tractors. All of the manufacturers have got autonomous tractors working, particularly in the US in a broad acre environment. And for them, it's about machine learning, right? So they might have 10 out the first year and they'll do X amount of hectares and then they keep going, building that fleet. And then I guess that machine learning then, because the computers that can process this stuff is super, super fast and it's pretty exciting. I think sprayer technology is probably the one that's the most exciting. Like, you have big 36 meter booms on some of these sprayers that are selectively spraying, particularly green on green, which is, weeds in a barley crop, for example, and it can just spot spray with, north of 70% chemical savings is, that's astronomical technology. And that's kind of where it's heading, right? Like, which is, and so while machinery is getting a lot more expensive, that is a fact, right? But there's so much more tech on them as well. And so I guess the argument is do we need all that tech? Well, probably some people aren't going to use it, but man, there's some exciting stuff on the horizon.
Yeah, well, that comes back to one of my questions, which Sarah and I have been discussing, and on-farm technology, tools versus toys. And I use the example of a dairy farmer buying a big flash new tractor, and you mentioned them buying bigger tractors. But the reality is, how much tech does a dairy farmer, say, need on a loader tractor? And are they over-engineered for those uses nowadays?
I think there's a couple of things. I think tractors are designed now to do more hours. I think what's going to happen is because machinery is more expensive, people are going to keep them for longer so that they are naturally going to do more hours on those tractors. I think what we're also seeing is that they'll buy a lower spec tractor and that might tow the cafeteria or tow calf trailers around and stack a few bales in the shed and whatever that might be. And then they'll spend more money on a more expensive tractor and that will do their fert spreading and their spraying and the larger feeding out, right? So I think if you look at the early adopters of that, auto track or steering capability, they're like 20% saving in fuel, 20% saving in fert. They're going into a 20 hectare paddock and actually only planting 20 hectares. There's no, in big areas, and again, this is where for the arable guys, a 20 centimetre overlap on these massive machines on big areas, it really adds up, So I think, to your point, some of them don't need a lot of tech, but I think we are seeing a move to people actually adopting that. A lot of people have got bigger tractors because the farms are getting bigger and the implements are getting bigger. And so therefore they can some of the stuff's a bit plug and play with Isobus technology now where different manufacturer implements can talk to all of the different manufactured tractors, so you get a nice sort of crossover there. It doesn't have to all be a one sort of brand, So I think you're always going to get those people that early adopt that technology, but the savings can be quite profound. And I think in times like this, I think we will see a move towards, more technology to save some money.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's not a toy, Andy, if it has a purpose. And Jaiden has just highlighted that very clearly.
Okay. Fair enough.
Yeah. I mean, if you wanted it on your 2680, if you wanted to get a screen in front of you so it could, tell you how to mow your lawn straight and that sort of stuff, Andy, I think it's all, there's a world of possibilities out there.
Can it tell me how to fix a fence post?
Yeah.
Anyway, that's a whole other story, isn't it, Sarah?
It can't save you from yourself, okay? We've got that's your job. Jaiden, thank you so very much for joining us on CountryWide Connect. Looking forward to hopefully having you on the show a lot more. It's always a pleasure. Jaiden Drought is the owner of Farm Trader and the president of the Tractor and Machinery Association.
CountryWide Connect with Andy Thompson and Sarah Perriam-Lampp.